Hare Krishna. Welcome to the live studios here in the Darshan room of Radha Kalachandji's Dham here in Dallas, Texas, where we have Mohini's family, the dedicated disciple of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and we have Krishna Chaitanya, Bhakta Steve, and so many viewers, whether you're live or whether you're viewing it at your convenience. We want to thank you from the depth of our hearts for coming to hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam. It's a special event for me. It's a dream come true that I can read Srila Prabhupada's books out loud to as many devotees as I have been. Even though I can't see you all, I'm very much connected, in touch with you all. So I pray that you enjoy. I pray that you like. That's what they do with the Facebook, right? And pass it on. Send this link, reading Srila Prabhupada, daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, to as many people as you can. It is our eternal service to His divine grace and His dearmost desire that the whole world read these books and get to know Krishna and Krishna's pure devotees. Okay, so we're a little late, sorry for that. We're reading Srimad-Bhagavatam tonight, 11th canto, starting from where we left off last night. But before we do, we're going to read the wonderful prayers that Srila Sanatana Goswami composed in glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarvalokaika Drik Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandoditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Premavarshak Shadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna Himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Mad Mahadana Mannistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin atini chochata kada hanamun chagadachin mam premnarit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Srila Sanatana Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading this evening from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2. Maharaj Nimi meets the 9 Yogendras. And we heard yesterday how the 9 Yogendras were the 9 sons out of 100 sons of Rishabhdev Maharaj, an incarnation of Krishna. And they were the 9 greatest sages among his 100 sons. And now we've reached the verses in which these 9 sons of Rishabhdev are going to answer 9 questions, one question each to each of the sons of Rishabhdev, the 9 Yogendras, beginning from text number 21. The 9 remaining sons of Rishabh were greatly fortunate sages who worked vigorously to spread knowledge of the absolute truth. They wandered about naked and were very well versed in spiritual science. Their names were Kavi, Havis, Antariksha, Prabhuta, Pipalayana, Avirhotra, Drumala, Chamasa, and Karabhajan. Purport. Nimi, the king of Videha, asked the following 9 questions of the 9 Yogendras, the saintly sons of Rishabha. 1. What is the highest good? 2. What are the religious principles, dharma, natural proclivities, swabhava, behavior, achara, speech, vakya, and outward symptoms, lakshana, of a Bhagavata, a Vaishnava devotee of the Lord, the Supreme Lord. 3. What is the external energy of Vishnu, the Supreme Lord? 4. How can one become disassociated from this Maya? 5. What is the true identity of Brahman? 6. What are the 3 types of karma? Namely, karma based on the enjoyment of the fruits of work, karma offered to the Supreme Lord, and Naishkarmya. 7. What are the various pastimes of the various incarnations of God? 8. What is the aim or destination of one who is against the Supreme Lord and devoid of bhakti? In other words, a non-devotee. And 9. What are the respective colors, forms, and names of the 4 Yuga avatars, the 4 incarnations of the Supreme Lord who appear in the 4 ages? And what is the process of worshipping each of them? Now that will take us through chapter 5. We're on chapter 2. Yeah. So these are the essential questions that if these questions are answered and you find out the answers to these questions, you know everything. So listen up. It's a good time to tune up your antennas, your spiritual antennas, and try to hear. So we're on chapter 2. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 4 chapters of the Srimad-Bhagavatam dedicated to these questions, answering these questions. Okay. Continuing on with this purport. The transcendental answers to these inquiries were given by the great devotees Havi, Havis, Antariksha, Prabhuda, Pipalayana, Avirhotra, Drumila, Chamasa, and Karabhajan. These 9 Paramahansas answered the 9 questions, each in turn, in the following verses. 1, chapter 2, verses 33 through 43. 2, chapter 2, verses 45 through 55. 3, chapter 3, verses 3 to 16. 4, chapter 3, verses 18 to 33. 5, chapter 3, verses 35 to 40. 6, chapter 3, verses 43 through 55. 7, chapter 4, verse 2 to 23. 8, chapter 5, verses 2 through 18, and question 9, or answer 9, chapter 5, verse 20 through 42. Text 22. We're still on chapter 2. These sages wandered the earth, seeing the entire universe, with all its gross and subtle objects, as a manifestation of the Supreme Lord, and as non-different from the Self. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, it is clearly demonstrated in this and the following verse that the 9 saintly sons of Rishabdev, known as the Nava-Yogendras, were situated in the highest stage of spiritual perfection, called Paramahansya Charitam, or having fully developed the character of Paramahansas. In other words, they were pure devotees of the Lord. According to Sridhar Swami and Jiva Goswami, the words Atmano Vyatikrinena indicate that the 9 sages saw the universe as being non-different from themselves, as well as non-different from the Supreme Lord, Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has additionally commented, quote, Atmana indicates the Supersoul. This universe is not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, since the entire universe is composed of His energy. Although it is stated here that the cosmic manifestation is non-different from both the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should not think that either the living entity or the Supreme Lord is material. The Vedic aphorism states, Asango Yayam Purusha. The living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead have nothing to do with the material world. Furthermore, Bhagavad Gita says that the entire universe, consisting of 8 gross and subtle elements, constitutes the Bina Prakriti, or Apara Prakriti, the separated, inferior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna clearly states in Bhagavad Gita that He has eternally established His own abode in the kingdom of God, where life is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and that the living entity, being part and parcel of God, is also eternal. Mamai vangsho jivaloke jivabhutak sanatanaha. Furthermore, once having gone to that eternal abode of the Lord, the living entity never returns to this temporary manifestation. Yam prapya nanivartante taddama paramam mama. One may therefore ask why the living entity and the Supreme Lord are stated to be non-different from the material universe. The question is very nicely answered by Srila Narada Muni in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Idam hi vishwam bhagavan ivetaro yato jagatstana nirodha sambhavaha. The Supreme Personality, the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, is himself this cosmos, and still he is aloof from it. From him only has this cosmic manifestation emanated, in him it rests, and unto him it enters after annihilation. Commenting on Narada's statement, Srila Prabhupada has very nicely explained this delicate philosophical point. Quote, for a pure devotee, the conception of Mukunda, Lord Sri Krishna, is both personal and impersonal. The impersonal cosmic situation is also Mukunda because it is the emanation of the energy of Mukunda. For example, a tree is a complete unit, whereas the leaves and branches of the tree are emanated parts and parcels of the tree. The leaves and branches of the tree are also the tree, but the tree itself is neither the leaves nor the branches. The Vedic version that the whole cosmic creation is nothing but Brahman means that since everything is emanating from the Supreme Brahman, nothing is apart from him. Similarly, the part and parcel, hands and legs, are called the body, but the body as a whole, as the whole unit, is neither the hands nor the legs. The Lord is the transcendental form of eternity, cognition, and beauty, and thus the creation of the energy of the Lord appears to be partially eternal, full of knowledge, and beautiful also. According to the Vedic version, the Lord is naturally fully powerful, and thus his supreme energies are always perfect and identical with him. Both the spiritual and the material skies and their paraphernalia are emanations of the internal and external energies of the Lord. External energy is comparatively inferior, whereas the internal energy potency is superior. The superior energy is living force, and therefore she is completely identical with the Lord. But the external energy, being inert, is partially identical. But both the energies are neither equal to nor greater than the Lord, who is the generator of all energies. Such energies are always under his control, exactly as electrical energy, however powerful it may be, is always under the control of the engineer. The human being and all other living beings are products of his internal energies. Thus the living being is also identical with the Lord, but he is never equal to or superior to the personality of Godhead. End quote. That was Srila Prabhupada's explanation. Srila Prabhupada has clearly explained here that both the cosmic manifestation and the living entities are emanations from the Supreme Lord, as confirmed both in Vedanta Sutra and in the opening statement of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Janmad Yasya Yataha. The absolute truth is that from which everything emanates. Similarly, the Ishopanishad states, Om Purnamadak Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Evavashishyate. The Supreme Lord, the Absolute Truth, is Purna, or complete in himself. And since this cosmic world is a manifestation of his potency, it also appears to be Purna. In other words, because this material world is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, it is non-different from him, exactly as the sun's rays are non-different from the sun globe, which is the source of their emanation. Similarly, the living beings, who are expansions of the superior or conscious energy of the Supreme Lord, are also non-different from Krishna, although this non-difference is qualitative and not quantitative. The gold found in golden ornaments such as rings and bracelets, is qualitatively identical with the gold in a mine. But the gold in the mine is quantitatively far superior to the tiny quantity of gold in a bracelet or ring. Similarly, although we are qualitatively one with God, being spiritual emanations of His unlimited potency, we are quantitatively infinitesimal and eternally subordinate to His supreme power. Therefore the Lord is called Vibhu, or infinitely potent, and we are Anu, or infinitesimally dependent. This is further confirmed in the Vedic literature by the statement, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vididati Kaman. There are innumerable eternal living entities who are eternally and totally dependent upon the supreme, singular living entity, the Supreme Lord. That dependence is not an illusion created by material existence, as stated by the impersonalist philosophers, but is an eternal relationship in which the Lord is eternally superior and we are eternally inferior. The Lord is eternally independent, and we are eternally dependent. The Lord is eternally absolute in Himself, and we are eternally relative to His Supreme Personality. Although the Lord is infinitely greater than any other living being, or than all of them combined. I'll read that again. Although the Lord is infinitely greater than any other living being, or than all of them combined, every living being is qualitatively non-different from the Lord, because all living beings are parts and parcels emanating from Him. Mamaivangsho jiva loke jiva bhutak sanatanaha. Therefore, in one sense, the living entity is also not different from the material cosmic manifestation, which is an inferior sister energy of the Lord. Both the living entity and the material nature are prakriti, or feminine, dependent expansions on the Supreme Purusha. The difference is that the living entity is superior energy of the Lord because the living entity is conscious and eternal, like the Lord, whereas material energy is the inferior energy of the Lord, lacking consciousness and eternal form. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has emphasized in this regard. I want to clarify that last statement. The difference is that the living entity is the superior energy of the Lord because the living entity is conscious and eternal like the Lord, whereas material energy is the inferior energy of the Lord, lacking consciousness and eternal form. So it means that the forms of the material world, the forms of the living entity, are temporary, but the living entity is eternal and conscious, as the Lord is eternal and conscious. But one is supreme and the other is infinitesimal. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has emphasized in this regard that the absolute substance is one and is called Paramatma, or the Supersoul. When one has achieved but a partial vision of the Paramatma, one's understanding of life is called Atma Darshana, or self-realization. And when even this partial understanding is lacking, one's existential condition is called Anatma Darshana, or ignorance of the self. In the state of partial realization, or ignorance of the self, in the state of partial realization of the Supersoul, without recognition of the Paramatma's distinction from the individual soul, the living entity tends to become puffed up by his spiritual achievement, be carried away by mental concoction, and consider himself equal in all respects with God. On the other hand, the living entity situated in anatma darshana, or material ignorance, feels that he is completely different from the Supreme Lord. And since everyone in this material world is interested in himself, the living entity forgets about God, thinking that God is completely different from him and that there is therefore no substantial relationship between him and God. In this way, the impersonal transcendentalists emphasize only the oneness between God and the living entity, whereas the ordinary materialists overemphasize the difference between God and the living entity. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has clearly revealed that the ultimate truth is simultaneously oneness and difference. Achintya Bedha Beda Tattva. Actually, we are eternally different from God, but the living entity and God are eternally separate individual entities. There exists, I'll read that again, sorry. Actually, we are eternally different from God, because the living entity and God are eternally separate individual entities. There exists the possibility of an eternal relationship. And because every living entity is qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, that relationship constitutes the essence of the ultimate reality for every living being. As stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 20:108, Jivira Sarupa Hoya Krishnera Nityadas. The ultimate essential identity of every living entity is his relationship with the Supreme Lord as a servitor of the Lord. If one can understand that he is an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can correctly understand that both the living entity and the material universe are identical with Krishna, being emanations from him, and that they are therefore non-different from each other. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has stated, the material world is a manifestation of simultaneous difference and non-difference, and it is a form of the Supreme Lord. Thus the temporary, perishable, and ever-changing material world is different from Vaikuntha, the eternal world. It should be noted that in this verse the word sarasad atmakam, or made up of gross and subtle objects, does not refer to material and spiritual objects. This universe is stated to be composed of sat and asat, gross and subtle material objects. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, quote, this very subtle state within the manifest world is known as the unmanifest, and the realm beyond the manifest world is called transcendental. Within the coverings surrounding the manifest, in the region of the time factor, is the phase of material existence experienced by the controlling deities. In this phase exist the two functions, cause, asat, and effect, sat. In the universe, which is a third tattva, or reality apart from and containing both sat and asat, and which is a form of the Supreme Lord, it is impossible to produce any contradiction to the non-dual absolute truth. In other words, although ignorant materialistic scientists may zealously carry out research to find a material principle that can negate or render unnecessary the existence of God, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati clearly states that since the universe is an emanation from the Lord, and therefore spiritually identical with him, there cannot possibly exist anywhere within the universe a material law, principle, or phenomenon that in any way contradicts the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, the entire universe, along with the spiritual sky, exists as eternal testimony to the unlimited glory of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. With this understanding, the 9 Yogendras were traveling about the earth in transcendental bliss. I mean, how incredible is that? This purport just practically explained what the consciousness of these 9 Yogendras was, how they saw the world. Setting the stage for their answering these questions in the best way possible. Text 23. The 9 Yogendras are liberated souls who travel freely to the planets of the demigods, the perfected mystics, the sadhyas, the heavenly musicians, the yakshas, the human beings, and the minor demigods such as the kinnaras and the serpents. No mundane force can check their free movement, and exactly as they wish, they can travel as well to the worlds of the sages, the angels, the ghostly followers of Lord Shiva, the Vidyadharas, the Brahmanas, and the cows. You know about that? The planet of the cows? When Lord Indra got embarrassed by Krishna and finally decided that he should come and beg forgiveness, he was afraid to come before Krishna because he was a huge offender. So he went to the planet of the cows, and there the queen of the cows, Surabhi, agreed to come with him because Indra knew that Krishna was so partial to the cows that if he was with Surabhi, his heart would soften and it would be better chance of him forgiving him. That planet is not in the spiritual world, it's in the material world. But all of the forefathers of the cows are there in the planet of the cows in the material world. Text 24. Once, in Ajanabha, the former name of the earth, Ajanabha, the former name of the earth, they came upon the sacrificial performance of the great soul, Maharaja Nimi, which was being carried out under the direction of elevated sages. 25. My dear king, seeing those pure devotees of the Lord who rival the sun in brilliance, everyone present, the performer of the sacrifice, the brahmanas, and even the sacrificial fires, stood in respect. 26. King Videha, Nimi, understood that the 9 sages were exalted devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, overjoyed at their auspicious arrival, he offered them suitable sitting places and worshipped them in a proper way, just as one would worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The word yatarhata is significant here. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti, the word yatarhata means yatochitam, or according to the proper etiquette. It is clearly mentioned here that the Nava-Yogendras are Narayana Parayana, exalted devotees of the Supreme Lord Narayana, or Krishna. Therefore, the Lord Yatarhata indicates that the king worshipped the 9 sages according to the standard Vaishnava etiquette. The etiquette for worshipping exalted Vaishnavas is expressed by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur with the words Sakshad Darit Twaina Samasta Shastrahi. That sounds familiar. It's one of the 8 prayers that we sing every day in Mangalarti. An exalted Vaishnava, being totally surrendered to the will of the Supreme Lord, is taken to be a transparent medium for the Lord's will. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that even by a moment's association with the pure devotees of the Lord, one can achieve all perfection in life. Therefore, as indicated by the word pritaha, King Nimi was overjoyed by the auspicious arrival of the sages, and therefore he worshipped them just as one would worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although impersonalist philosophers claim that every living entity is equal to God, they callously step over the heads of their so-called spiritual masters and freely speculate on the nature of the Absolute, giving their own whimsical opinions in defiance of the impersonal whims of their so-called gurus. In other words, although Mayavadi impersonalists claim that everyone is God, they ultimately show an offensive mentality toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead in rejecting the reality of His eternal form and pastimes. Thus, they unwittingly belittle the eternal position of all living beings by denying their eternal personality and activities in the kingdom of God. The impersonalists, through their mental concoctions, try to minimize the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities who are part of Him, reducing them theoretically to a formless, nameless light, which by their concoction they claim to be the absolute God. The Vaishnavas, however, welcome the Supreme Personality of Godhead and easily understand that the unlimited Supreme Personality has nothing to do with the conditioned, limited, mundane personalities we find in the material world. The impersonalists arrogantly assume that there could not be any transcendental or unlimited personality beyond our present experience. But the Vaishnavas intelligently understand that there are as many wonderful things far beyond our limited experience. Therefore, they accept the words of Krishna, who states in the Bhagavad Gita, Yo mameva masamudo janati purushottamam sasarvavid bhajanti mam sarva bhavana bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is a knower of everything, and he therefore engages himself in full devotional service, O son of Bharata. In this connection, Srila Prabhupada states, quote, there are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the Supreme Absolute Truth. Now in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna as the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. Therefore, exalted devotees, such as the 9 Yogendras, always accept the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as expressed here by the word Narayana Parayana. King Nimi was a Vaishnava, and therefore he worshipped the great sages with the same respect with which he would worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as known by the word Yatarhata. Although impersonalists falsely claim that every living entity is equal to God, they cannot properly respect any living being because of their original offense at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality. Their so-called worship, even of their own gurus, is ultimately self-serving and opportunistic. When an impersonalist imagines that he has become God, he has no further need of his so-called guru. The Vaishnava, however, because he accepts the supremacy of the eternal personality of Godhead, is ready and willing to offer eternal respect to all living beings, especially to those most fortunate living beings who have achieved shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. A Vaishnava's worship of the Lord's representative is not self-serving or opportunistic, but is an expression of eternal love for the Lord and his representatives, as indicated here by the word pritaha. Therefore it is clear from this verse that not only the 9 exalted sons of Rishabdev, but also King Nimi himself were all great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in defiance of the artificial and limited concept of impersonalism. Text 27. Overwhelmed by transcendental joy, the king humbly bowed his head and then proceeded to question the 9 sages. These 9 great souls glowed with their own effulgence and thus appeared equal to the 4 Kumaras, the sons of Lord Brahma. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami has pointed out that the word Swarucha indicates that the Nava-Yogendras glowed from their own spiritual effulgence and not due to their ornaments or any other cause. The Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, is the original source of all light. His brilliantly glowing body is the source of the all-pervading Brahmajyoti, the immeasurable spiritual light that is the resting place of innumerable universes. Yasya Prabha, Prabhavato, Jagadandakoti. The individual soul, being part and parcel of the Lord, is also self-effulgent. In fact, everything in the kingdom of God is self-effulgent, as described in Bhagavad Gita. Na tad bhasyate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yadgatva nanivartante tad dhamma paramamama. It has already been described in many ways that the Nava-Yogendras were pure devotees of the Lord. Being completely Krishna-conscious souls, they naturally radiated the intense effulgence of the soul, as indicated here by the word Swarucha. Srila Sridhar Swami has also pointed out that the word Brahma Putropanam, in meaning equal to the sons of Lord Brahma, indicates that the Nava-Yogendras were on the same spiritual platform as the 4 exalted Kumara brothers. It has been described in the 4th canto that Maharaj Prithu received the 4 Kumaras with great love and reverence, and here King Nimi is similarly receiving the 9 sons of Lord Rishabdev. Receiving exalted Vaishnavas with love and reverence is standard spiritual etiquette for those who desire progress and happiness in life. There you have it. Text 28. King Videha said, I think that you must be direct associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is famous as the enemy of the demon Madhu. Indeed, the pure devotees of Lord Vishnu wander throughout the universe, not for their personal selfish interest, but to purify all the conditioned souls. Purport. King Nimi here welcomes the great sages by glorifying their transcendental activities. It is well known that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the 3 modes of material nature, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Mamebhyak Paramavyayam. Similarly, his pure devotees are also on the transcendental platform. One may ask how such transcendental living beings as the associates of Lord Vishnu could be seen within the material world. Therefore it is stated here, Pavanaya Chidantihi. The associates of Lord Vishnu travel throughout the universe to reclaim the fallen conditioned souls on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as representative of the governor. Excuse me, I got a message and I got distracted. Excuse me. Therefore it is stated here, Pavanaya Chirantihi. The associates of Lord Vishnu travel throughout the universe to reclaim the fallen, conditioned souls on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A representative of the governor may be seen moving within the prison house, but that does not mean that the governor's representative has become a conditioned prisoner. It is understood that he is within the prison to negotiate the possible release of those prisoners who have rectified their criminal propensity. Similarly, the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, called Parivajakacharyas, wander throughout the universe, inviting everyone to surrender to Lord Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. In the 6th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the mercy of the associates of Lord Vishnu has been described in connection with the salvation of Ajamil. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has pointed out that the associates of Lord Vishnu are as merciful as the Lord himself. Even though the ignorant members of human society are not interested in approaching the servants of Lord Vishnu, the devotees of the Lord, without any false prestige, act to liberate the conditioned souls from their perpetual misfortune. Text 29. For the conditioned souls, the human body is most difficult to achieve, and it can be lost at any moment. But I think that even those who have achieved human life rarely gain the association of pure devotees, who are dear to the Lord of Vaikuntha. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word Dehinam means Bahavo Deva Bhavanti Yesham Te, the conditioned souls who accept innumerable material bodies. According to some wishful thinkers, a living entity in the human form of life will never be degraded to a lower form, such as that of an animal or a plant. But despite this wishful thinking, it is a fact that according to our activities at present, we will be elevated or degraded by the laws of God. At the present time in human society, there is no clear or precise understanding of the nature of life. Foolish scientists have invented highly sophisticated terminologies and theories to bluff innocent people into believing that life comes from chemical reactions. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has exposed this bluff in his book, Life Comes from Life, which points out that although scientists claim that life comes from chemicals, they cannot produce so much as an insect, even from unlimited quantities of chemicals. Actually, life and consciousness are symptoms of the spirit soul. In Life Comes from Life, Srila Prabhupada has stated, quote, living beings move from one bodily form to another. The forms already exist. The living entity simply transfers himself, just as a man transfers himself from one apartment to another. One apartment is first class, another is second class, and another is third class. Suppose a person comes from a lower class apartment to a first class apartment. The person is the same. But now, according to his capacity for payment or karma, he is able to occupy a higher class apartment. Real evolution does not mean physical development, but development of consciousness. Within every species of life, there is consciousness. And that consciousness is the symptom of the living entity, who is the superior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without understanding this essential point of the transmigration of the conscious living entity throughout 8,400,000 species of life, one cannot possibly understand the words Durlabho Manaso Deha. The human body is very rarely achieved. Excuse me, just a little. What did I do? People are now being cheated of this essential understanding. They are completely unaware of the danger of slipping back into the 8 million species that lie below the human species. It is natural that a human being think in terms of progress. We want to feel that our life is progressing and that we are advancing and improving the quality of our life. Therefore, it is urgent that people be informed of the great danger of misusing the valuable human life, and that they know of the great opportunity the human life affords, the opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness. Just as on earth, different residential areas are divided into high class, middle class, and low class, within the universe there are upper class, middle class, and lower class planets. By practice of the yoga system, or by meticulous execution of religious rituals, one can transfer himself to the higher planets within this universe. On the other hand, by neglecting religious principles, one will degrade himself to a lower planet. But the Supreme Lord Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma bhuvanaloka punar arvatanorjuna. Thus the final conclusion is that every planet within the material universe is an unsuitable and inappropriate residence, because on each planet there are the primal defects, old age and death. The Lord assures us, however, that in His transcendental abode, which lies far beyond the material cosmos, life is everlasting, blissful, and absolutely cognizant. The material world is temporary, troublesome, and rife with ignorance. But the spiritual world, called Vaikuntha, is eternal, blissful, and full of perfect knowledge. The highly evolved human brain is a gift given by God so that we may use our intelligence to distinguish between that which is eternal and that which is temporary. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubayor abhidrishdontas, tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that matter has no permanent existence, whereas the spirit soul never ceases to exist. Learned seers have concluded this by studying the nature of both. Continuing the purport. Those who have accepted the Supreme Lord and His abode as the ultimate goal of life are called Vaikuntha Priya. Nice name. Here King Nimi states that to have the personal association of such learned transcendentalists is certainly the perfection of human life. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur suggests that we consider the following verse. Nrideham adyam sulabam sudurlabam plavam sukalpam gurukarnadaram mayanukulena nabasvateritam puman vivadim nateret saatmaha. The Supreme Lord said, The best of bodies, a human body, is a great attainment, rarely achieved, and may be compared to a boat. The Guru is an expert captain for this boat, and I have sent favorable winds, the Vedas. Thus I have given all facilities for crossing over the ocean of material existence. Any human being who has achieved these excellent facilities of human life but does not cross over the material ocean is to be considered the killer of his own self. That's from the 11th canto, 20th chapter, text 17. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the eternal servants of the Supreme Lord, being controlled by powerful feelings of mercy, descend into the material world as Vaishnavas to deliver the conditioned souls who are bound by the results of their own mundane work. Such Vaishnavas also distribute their mercy to those who are laboriously searching after the impersonal Absolute. Sri Narada Muni has stated that without ecstatic love of Godhead, such laborious impersonal contemplation of the Absolute is certainly troublesome. Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhava varjitam. And what to speak of the innumerable problems of ordinary, gross materialistic life? We have practical experience that in the Western countries, most people are working hard to get money, laboring under heavenly dreams of sense gratification. Others, having become frustrated with ordinary materialistic life, are trying to negate their personal existence and merge into the existence of God through so-called yoga and meditation. Both classes of unhappy people are receiving the mercy of the Krishna consciousness movement, putting aside their dreams of sense gratification as well as their troublesome impersonal speculation. They are learning to chant the holy names of God, dance in ecstasy, and feast on the holy food offered to the Lord, and getting intoxicated by doing it. I was just cooked a wonderful meal by the family that's sitting here with me, and it was so rich in love and well prepared preparations that I'm lucky I can read tonight. Having feasted on the holy food offered to the Lord, as it says here. It's all your fault. They become enlivened by the transcendental knowledge spoken by the Lord Himself in the Bhagavad Gita. As the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Susukam kartum avyayam. The actual process of spiritual freedom is joyful to perform and has nothing to do with fruitive activities aimed at sense gratification or with dry impersonal speculation. More and more people are taking to the process of Krishna consciousness, becoming joyful and eagerly distributing Krishna's mercy to others. Thus, the whole world will be enlivened and inspired by the Krishna consciousness movement, which is the practical demonstration of the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Text 30. Therefore, O completely sinless ones, I ask you to kindly tell me what is the supreme good. So here's the first question. Therefore, O completely sinless ones, I ask you to kindly tell me what the supreme good is. After all, even half a moment's association with pure devotees within this world of birth and death is a priceless treasure for any man. Purport. The word Shevadihi, or a great treasure, is significant in this verse. Just as an ordinary man is overjoyed to discover an unexpected treasure, one who is actually intelligent is overjoyed to gain the association of a pure devotee of the Lord, by which one's life in a single moment we are constantly in fear. But the pure devotees of the Lord can teach us the practical way to free ourselves from material existence, and thus to abolish all types of fear. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, normal etiquette would dictate that a host immediately ask a guest who has arrived about his well-being. But such an goal of life. According to Bhagavad Gita, the goal of life is to free oneself from the cycle of birth and death and reinstate oneself as an eternal servant of God on the platform of spiritual bliss. Pure devotees of the Lord do not waste their time with ordinary mundane affairs. Sometimes foolish relatives of a Vaishnava preacher lament that such a transcendental preacher has not used his life for material business, and that so much money has been therefore lost by the practice of spiritual life. Such ignorant persons cannot imagine of surrendered heart and soul. King Nimi was himself a learned Vaishnava, and therefore he did not foolishly ask the sages about ordinary worldly affairs. He immediately inquired about Atyantikam Chamam, the highest, most perfect goal of life. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the word anagaha, O sinless ones, has two meanings. Anaga indicates that the 9 Yogendras were themselves completely free of sins. It also indicates that merely by the great fortune of seeing them and hearing from them submissively, an ordinary sinful man could also be freed of his sins and achieve everything he desired. One might object that since the great sages had just arrived, the king should not have been so impatient as to inquire from them about the perfection of life. Perhaps the king should have waited until the sages themselves invited his inquiry. Such a hypothetical objection is answered by the words Chanadropi. Even a single moment's association with pure devotees, or even half a moment's association, is sufficient to give one the perfection of life. I'll read that again. An ordinary person, for even a single moment's association with pure devotees, or even half a moment's association, is sufficient to give one the perfection of life. An ordinary person who is offered a great treasure will immediately desire to claim such a treasure. Similarly, King Nimi was thinking, why should I consider myself fortunate enough to have such great sages stay here for a long time? Because I am an ordinary person, undoubtedly you will soon be leaving. Therefore, let me immediately take advantage of your holy association. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in this world there are different varieties of mercy. But ordinary mercy cannot bring about the cessation of all unhappiness. In other words, there are many humanitarians, altruists, and social reformers who certainly work for the benefit of humanity. Such persons are universally considered merciful. But in spite of their mercy, humanity continues to suffer in the grip of birth, old age, disease, and death. I may distribute free food to the needy, but even after eating my merciful gift, the recipient will again become hungry. Or he will suffer in some other way. In other words, By mere humanitarianism or altruism, people do not actually become free from unhappiness. Their unhappiness is merely postponed or altered. King Nimi was joyful upon seeing the Nava-Yogendras because he knew that they were eternally perfect associates of the Supreme Lord. Therefore he thought, "You are not prone to sinful activities like unfortunate, mundane people such as me. Thus the words you speak carry no deception or exploitation." The materially conditioned souls spend their days and nights discussing various topics of sense gratification. They never find time to hear about transcendental knowledge. But even if only briefly or accidentally they hear Harikatha, topics of Krishna, in the association of pure devotees of the Lord, their propensity to suffer in the material existence will slacken. When one sees liberated persons, hears about Krishna from them, remembers their saintly behavior, and so on, one's tendency to bind himself in the illusion of sense gratification is diminished, and he becomes eager to serve the Supreme Lord. What a beautiful purport. Text 31. He's continuing to ask the question. Translation. See, these personalities in the Bhagavatam are so deep. Just to say hello, it takes them quite a few minutes. Their exchanges are so cultured and so beautiful. They're just by listening to them deal with one another, we can become elevated, and also, if we're intelligent enough, we can learn how to behave. I mean, we can't imitate them and go around and greet someone with a 15-minute dialogue, and have them run out the door. But these personalities are so elevated and so pleasant and so merciful and wise that they have no problem listening to each other talk, for periods of time, just to greet and respond and so on and so forth. It's so wonderful, so elevating. No? No? Thought so. Translation. Please speak about how one engages in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. If you consider me capable of properly hearing these topics, when a living entity offers loving service to the Supreme Lord, the Lord is immediately satisfied, and in return, He will give even His own self to the surrendered soul. So these questions are so elevated that they're answering the questions themselves. Purport. It means that the more elevated your question is, the more elevated the answers can become. So those who are very advanced, when they inquire, they get the complete answer by the nature of their questions. Purport. Within the material world, there are two classes of mundane philosophers who present their opinions about the Supreme Lord. Some so-called theologians claim that we are infinitely different from God, and therefore they tend to look upon the Lord as something far beyond our power to understand. Such extreme dualistic philosophers outwardly or officially claim to be pious and religious believers in God, but they consider God so much different from that which is within our experience that according to them, there is little profit in even trying to discuss the personality or attributes of the Supreme Lord. Sour grapes, it sounds like that. Such outwardly faithful persons generally take to fruitive activities and gross materialistic sense gratification, being infatuated with the mundane relationships of the material world, which appear under the headings society, friendship, and love. The Advaitavadis, or non-dualistic philosophers, claim that there is no difference between God and the living entity, and that the highest goal of life is to give up our personal existence, which is due to illusion, and merge into the impersonal Brahman effulgence, which is devoid of name, form, paraphernalia, and personality. Thus, neither class of speculative philosopher is able to understand the transcendental personality of Godhead. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his sublime teaching of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, or simultaneous oneness and difference, has clearly demonstrated that we are qualitatively one with God, but quantitatively different. God is personal consciousness, and He has His personal form. Similarly, we are also personal consciousness, and ultimately, when liberated, we also have eternal forms. The difference is that the eternal form and personality of the Supreme Lord contain unlimited potency and opulence, whereas our potency and opulence are infinitesimal. We are conscious of our personal body, whereas Lord Krishna, is the absolute truth, is conscious of everyone's body. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Chitragya chapimam vidi sarva cheteshu bharata. But although God is infinitely greater than the living entity, both God and the living entities are eternal personalities with form, activities, and feelings. The Supreme Lord Krishna expands Himself into innumerable living entities to enjoy rasas, or ecstatic relationships with them. The living entities are part and parcel of Lord Krishna, and they are meant to serve Him with love. Although the Supreme Lord is eternally the predominator, and the living entity is eternally the predominated, when the living entity surrenders unto the Lord with a sincere loving attitude, desiring to serve the Lord eternally without the slightest expectation of personal reward for such service, the Lord immediately is pleased, as expressed here by the word prasanna. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is so unlimitedly merciful and magnanimous that in his gratitude to such a surrendered and loving servitor, He is immediately inclined to offer anything, even Himself, to His surrendered devotee. There are numerous practical historical examples of this loving propensity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because of the love of Mother Yashoda, child Krishna, in his form as Damodar, surrendered himself to his loving mother and allowed himself to be bound with ropes as a childhood punishment. Similarly, feeling indebted to the Pandavas for their intense love for him, Krishna, in his form as Parthasarathi, happily agreed to drive the chariot of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Similarly, Krishna in Vrindavan is always thinking of ways to satisfy the gopis, who are universally recognized as the most exalted, loving devotees of the Lord. Such intense loving feelings exchanged by the Lord and His pure devotees would not be possible were the living entities not qualitatively one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and indeed inseparable parts and parcels of the Lord. On the other hand, because both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities are eternally individuals, each with his own eternal individual consciousness, such loving exchanges are a perpetual reality in the kingdom of God. In other words, absolute oneness with God and absolute difference from God are theoretical imaginations of different schools of speculative philosophy. The perfection of spiritual love, as described in this verse, is based on simultaneous oneness and difference. And this absolute reality was elaborately presented by Lord Krishna himself in his Brahminical incarnation as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have expounded this perfect doctrine in innumerable books, culminating in the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has most perfectly presented this knowledge in a way that is understandable not only in India, but to all the people of the world. Our present insignificant attempt is simply to complete his translation and commentary on Srimad-Bhagavatam, and we are constantly praying for his guidance so that this work can simply be completed exactly as he would have desired. If one can understand these teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as they are being presented in Western languages, surely the Lord will be satisfied with such a sincere seeker of spiritual truth. Now, I don't know whether you notice it, but my voice, I just ran out of voice. I've been talking all day, and I ran out of voice. I can't talk anymore. But I'd like to say, first I'd like to ask for reflections or comments, and I'd also like to comment myself before I do on this last paragraph. The humility being expressed here by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, my God brothers, is reminiscent of and an indication of qualified Vaishnavas. I mean, when you read this work, you can understand that these persons are highly qualified. And yet they're saying that they're not qualified, that their effort is bound to be imperfect. Such humility of one who is in real knowledge, who has actually heard from a liberated soul and agreed to repeat what liberated souls have said, their words are also liberated. That's my point. These are liberated words. They're so nice, and they explain the intricacies of spiritual science in such a way that we can not only understand them, but deeply understand them, following exactly in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. So we're very fortunate to have known them, and we still know a couple of them. Gopi Pranadana Prabhu was my very deep friend and associate and we worked together for 5 years on the Briyat Bhagavatamrita, and it was a great loss to the world, his passing away. Great loss to the world. So, Hare Krishna. I thank everyone out there in Cyberland. Please don't forget to share these wonderful readings of this glorious 11th canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. There's much, much more to come. We pray that you'll join us for the completion of the Bhagavatam, for the completion of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the completion of the Gita, and then the completion of the Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita and Gita for the rest of our lives. And then we will easily become undisturbed when we have to change the body, which we already have changed so many times in this life. But when it comes to the change to the next life, we will not be disturbed. We will be so desirous of going home, back to Godhead, and being with this unlimitedly wonderful Supreme Person we're hearing about, that we'll jump out of our bodies to get there, rather than hold on thinking we're not ready, as a materialistic person does. Hare Krishna. Reflections, comments? I'm through for the night. I'm not going to say anything more. Reflections, comments? Yes, KC, Krishna Chaitanya.
Krishna, thank you for reading. I've noticed that
he's noticed that the writers here are taking pains, as Srila Prabhupada did, to destroy all of our false conceptions.
That we don't have a relationship with God.
That we don't have a relationship with God. Too far away.
Or that the goal is to merge.
Or the goal is to merge and become Him.
Right? And a lot of other misunderstandings. So it seems like they have to be cleared before we can really relish, the relationship.
Exactly, because it's misconception that keeps us in this material world, that keeps us from identifying with the body as the self. It's as simple as that.
Also, I really like that place where you said
is that trapped in these transmigration of so many lifetimes.
And they were pointing out how we're being cheated out of this understanding.
Oh, that's very nice. And they're pointing out how we're being cheated out of this understanding, out of this proper understanding. Yes. It's Maya's thankless task. Maya is also a pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore she's very powerful. And if you think that you can trick Maya or fool her, then you've got another thing coming. And if you think you're going to cheat Krishna, you've really got another secret. He's the supreme cheater. You try to cheat him and he will cheat you, and that's it. Better we get on his side. No?
He will cheat us and we will never know we are cheated.
He'll cheat us in a way that we'll never know we're being cheated. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But the thing is, he's also so supremely kind. All of these different apparently contradictory qualities, they're all reconciled in Krishna because he has all of them to an infinite degree. So even if we can understand him enough to go back to Godhead, which these books are giving us that opportunity, we'll never understand even a drop of his infinite qualities. But just a drop is enough. There was one so-called philosopher who came to see Prabhupada in Paris, and he was really arrogant. And he came in and he announced, God is light, and therefore I cannot talk about God. So Prabhupada looked at him and he said, oh, God is light? He said, yes. He said, so you understand God? He said, yes. He said, then why can't you talk about him? Because he is light? And then Prabhupada just said, he just dismissed him completely. And he tried to talk his way back in the conversation. Prabhupada wouldn't have it. And he just ended up going away in a huff. So Maya is so strong, she can convince anyone of anything at any time. And we should always be conscious of that and maintain a healthy fear of Maya, so we won't ever chase after her again. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the followers of Srila Prabhupada who completed his work. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and all the devotees who were listening to the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.